Mom in her little Daihatsu, like a hairdryer. She's coming up to collect me, and I'm mortified in front of all these posh kids. Can you hear that? I hope you can, because that's the last tattoo. Sinead O'Connor, just as I'm about to tell my fighter story. And in pops Sinead O'Connor with the last tattoo. Happy St. Patrick's Day, folks. So today I'm telling my story of addiction, recovery, abuse. So we're going to cover quite a lot today, and I really do, first of all, want to apologise to my community for veering off the subject of my life story and trying to do things that were trending and just did not suit who I am. So my apologies. There's enough hate being spread in this world. There's enough channels out there that will cover these news aspects, I suppose, but that's not who I am. I am addiction recovery. I am the face of addiction. So come with me and let's talk about my life journey. Now we're going to cover the childhood part of my life because heck, I've been through some shit with me, and I'm going to read the first passage of my book, which will give you a little teaser into where we're going today. So I have a quote from Lao Tzu, who is just my everything. Him and Wayne Dyer. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Now, my community on Facebook nearly know this off by heart. Well, I'm sure they do because I'm constantly saying it. As I stood there perspiring and shaking from the multiple poisons and trauma in my body, I knew this was the decision that was to save my life. This was it. The moment that was to shape, mold, and change the very fabric of my soul. No more drama. No more pain. No more abuse or fighting for my very existence daily. As I walked tentatively through those gates, I knew for the first time in my life, I was free. Now that first passage is me walking into treatment. But as I said, we've a lot to cover before we get to that point. So today we're covering the childhood. And you can see how the trauma was instilled in me throughout my life. I just love that Sinead O'Connor is playing in the background. You can see how the childhood trauma is instilled in me throughout my life. And what I'm going to do today is lead you all the way up to the massive incident that set me down that path of self-destruction. Okay? So there's a lot of trigger warnings in here. So we're going to talk about why people get into addiction, why self-destruction happens, why is addiction generational, why are we still talking about addiction to this day, why is there new drugs coming into this country, have we not learned our lessons? So we're going to talk quite a lot. So if you were signed up to the channel, I do appreciate it. If you haven't, please make sure and hit that notification bell. Don't forget to follow and like. Big thumbs up, please, if you don't mind. So you can stay up to all things addiction recovery. And if you have been following the channel up to now, you will see this is a big diverse back to where I belong. Okay, this is where I belong, in my lane, speaking my story, talking to my community. Okay, so I was born in 1976 in Crumlin. Many greats come from Crumlin. Must be something in the waters out in Crumlin. In 1976, on a lovely sunny Sunday, and the nurses were so amazed by my different coloured eyes, red hair and freckles. Would I have freckles at that stage? Anyway, they paraded me around the ward, and that must have been where my ego was born too. And we lived in what would be considered a fairly small house. We had 1.5 bedrooms for 4 children, 2 parents and a grandmother. So it was many personality clashes, but I really want to bring in here I've got a lot of inspirations in my life, but one of the biggest ones is my younger brother. And he was born like many of us, but unfortunately there was an accident at the hospital and the nurse dropped him. So there's no actual name for what he has. He doesn't speak, and he would be considered severely mentally disabled. So this was in the 70s and 80s. So disabilities weren't as widely accepted as they are to this day. In fact, there was a woman on our street that had a Down syndrome child that never let her out of the house. And that was the shame and stigma that was attached to disabilities back then. So that's what we were dealing with. So I almost became a guardian of sorts for him. And it was only through my recovery did I realise that he didn't really need me to be his guardian, because he couldn't give a hoot if people were staring, sniggering or joking or whatever the case may be. It was me who cared. So I was almost guarding my own insecurities. And that's something that I've kind of figured out through my recovery. So I'm going on 13, well, I am 13 years, 6th of March. I always say I never count, so I had to count back and see how long I'd been, because I heard this phrase, which is brilliant. It's not the it's not the quantity of your recovery time, it's the quality. And I also want to put in here also, it's not the size of your platform, it's what you do with it. And I intend on doing good with this platform, educating people, being kind, being caring, being supportive, putting a hand out to people and saying, look, I've been through it. If you want any advice, education, come follow me. I'm a trauma expert now as well, because heck, I've been through it, as I've said a couple of times. So yeah, I did. I became his guardian. And this house was a crazy house because many personalities were clashing. And also, back in those days, you could drink and drive and nobody would say anything to you. It was just the way it was back then. And my father had his own childhood trauma. So he would drink quite a lot, particularly at the weekends. And when he drank to excess, he was somebody that none of us recognised. He became angry and rageful. So there was lots of fights, arguments, fists punched through the walls, to a point where I still cower if I hear raised voices or anger. It's something that I'm still working on. But thankfully, when he actually retired, he settled down, the anger dissipated, and he became calm and peaceful. So we're all thankful for that. But I was very like my father in regards to drink. I became somebody that was absolutely obnoxious. But before we get to that point, back to the olden days. So my nanny lived with us, as I've said, and she, in my book, I speak about her so much because she's a massive inspiration to me. And she would see when it was triggered as a young child with the shouting and screaming and the anger and the fighting. She would grab me, bring her up to the room and put on Alice in Wonderland on her little tape recorder really loud so I couldn't hear the arguments. And this was her way of protecting me almost. And Alice in Wonderland I remember last Mother's Day, we went to the most beautiful gardens that are Alice in Wonderland inspired. To say my inner child was singing, my inner child was just like, it's almost like I came full circle in that moment. It was absolutely beautiful. But she would do that and have me act out all of the characters, almost switch my attention from all of that chaos and mayhem back to fun and happiness and playfulness. And if it wasn't Alice in Wonderland, then we were cuddled up on the couch in her big cardigan watching black and white movies. So I was bullied quite a lot as a kid. And also, when other kids are talking about Barbies and action figures, I was talking about Gone with the Wind, Vivian Leigh. I used to tell people I was named after her, in fact. Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, and of course my favourite, Jean Kelly. And I still love black and white movies to this day. And that was her way of bringing my imagination to its absolute fullest, and I felt so safe and so secure with her. So at the age of 9, all of a sudden she was gone. And you can imagine, as a 9-year-old child who absolutely adored her grandmother, to come home one day, where's Nana? Where is Nana? And my mum was cleaning out the fire and she said, chicken, she's been called home to heaven. And I kind of looked at her, and for a moment I didn't get it. But then my mother said the tears just came and came and came. To be honest with you, that was the last time I cried for a very, very long time. And it wasn't but 2 years later that my parents decided that it was best for my younger brother if we moved somewhere that was more secure, more safe, that had more amenities for him, a better school for him. So I was uplifted out of everything that I knew, all of the friends that I had gathered together, the ones that I could keep at least, because I almost lived my imagination in reality. And that's why people couldn't connect with me, because they felt like I was somewhere in La La Land. But really it was like a coping mechanism for the trauma and stuff that was happening at home. So uplifted out of this environment to this posh place in the southeast of Ireland. We were blessed to move there, but at that time I didn't feel that way. I remember the first day of school, I'm being bullied yet again, bullied in the old place, bullied yet again because I had my socks up around my knees. Apparently it wasn't very trendy. You had to have them rolled down around your ankles. And I hear these accents that are so posh, and their parents are coming to pick them up in big beamers, and there's my mum in her little Daihatsu, you know, like a hairdryer. She's coming up to collect me, and I'm mortified in front of all these posh kids. But that was just my insecurities. It was nothing got to do with, you know, the other kids. It was just me. But at the time I thought it was their fault, and that was me throughout the entirety of my life. Everything was their fault. It wasn't my fault, it was their fault. So I ran home that day and made a proclamation that was to last 20 odd years. I said, I'm going to do anything, say anything to fit in, because that's all most of us want, is to be able to fit in and belong. So I ran with the herd. I didn't only run with the herd, I drank with the herd. I started drinking quite young, and that's when the behavior started to skyrocket out of control. And in fact, a lot of people would think that I was narcissistic, particularly going into my teen years, because I didn't cry, I didn't show emotion. So they're all signs of a narcissist. But yet I was burying down trauma. So that was my trauma response. It wasn't that I was a narcissist. It was just that I was trying to function in a way that seemed normal as such. So as the years passed by, I did get into drinking quite a lot, drinking in fields, straight vodka out of a straw. Once I got that taste of alcohol and truly did decide, this is it, what have I been doing? This gives me confidence, it allows me to fit in, it makes me feel great, I feel numb when I drink. This is the answer to all of my problems. Not so much, because at the age of 16, I had been out on a bender, running with the wrong crowd, and as I'm stumbling home, there's a guy that was in our friend circle at the time behind me, and he knew that there was a field beside my house, so he grabs me from behind, carries me like completely off my feet into this field. And the shock, I sobered up really quickly. And I remember lying on the grass thinking, what is happening? I was a virgin, and my group of friends knew this, as did he. So the minute I seen him unbuckle his trousers, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And I just zoned out. I was trying to pick a point in the sky and just pretend that this wasn't happening. And all of a sudden, I remember this pain and just feeling so overwhelmed, but yet shocked and numb, all at the same. You can just picture all of these emotions that were just bubbling up inside me all at this point. So after he finishes, he stands up, spits at me, and he says, there's your first time, Viv. So I'm shaking and I'm gathering my clothes together, all bloodied up clothes. I gathered up all of my bloody clothes and I'm carrying them home, and I'm shaking with torn clothes. I run into my bedroom and I hide the clothes in the closet. I wait till the next day. I go out to the garden and I burnt them clothes. Every bit of evidence was gone, so I no longer had to even think about this incident. So I leave it there for today. But we shall see what happens after that incident. Thank you for watching. It's Vivian Clifford signing off.